Welcome back. In the course of the week, I had a sit down with the CEO, Ycenter. Now, this is an organization that is using human-centered solutions to provide what would appear as a setback to the biggest sectors around the world. They are in different countries in Africa. They've been in Western Kenya. They've been in West Africa, sorry. They've been in Kenya for 6 years. I had a sit down with them, and they're trying to say that indeed they can provide a solution to our agribusiness by focusing on those human-centered areas. Let's take a look into that conversation. Thank you very much for joining us again here on Agribusiness. My name is Simba, Charles Kiage. Remember, you can be part of these conversations online right now at Lookup TV across all your social media platforms. I am at Kiage Simba. Let's get talking this morning or this afternoon in that matter. We are going to really talk about business. But in this sense, agribusiness from a human-centered perspective. You may ask me, what is that? Why are we talking about human-centered solutions, especially when it comes to agribusiness? Now, we do know how intimate agribusiness is to Africa, but most importantly, Kenya. Now, in the building, I do have two very interesting gentlemen, but I will introduce where they come from. Ycenter. We're going to learn what Ycenter is, learn what human-centered designs are or solutions, and then after that, get to talk about agribusiness from a human-centered perspective. Interesting conversations to come in the studio. Let me introduce the CEO, Ycenter. Dhairya, Pujara, how are you doing, sir?
Doing wonderful. Thank you, Simba, for having us.
Fantastic. Also joining us in the conversation, we do have Rohaan Goswami, who is the Chief Operating Officer, Director of Strategy, Ycenter. How are you doing, Rohaan?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Fantastic. You guys, I told you, welcome to Kenya would mean karibu. You know what you say?
Yeah.
Asante.
Asante sana.
Asante sana.
Fantastic. Let me start with you, Dhairya.
Yes.
Ycenter. Who is this? And let's begin from there.
Okay. Ycenter is a startup company that we founded in US in 2014. One of the big things I saw in the world, actually, if I may, I see that I'm an engineer and I see people have this engineering PhDs and masters, and we have so much talent with young people. And then we have these problems and so many complex problems in the world. If you connect these two, it should solve everything. That's what we think. But it doesn't happen for some reason. And Ycenter fits right there in that gap of people who are really talented, who have the right intentions to solve world problems, but don't have the right skills, humanities, empathy, innovation, and business. And that's what Ycenter is. That's who Ycenter is.
Well, when you were thinking about Ycenter, what was your vision about it when you were forming it?
The vision was and is solving world problems. It seems very big, but that is it. That's what keeps us going every single day. We want to solve world problems. And we want to do it not for the people. We want to do it with the people.
That's it. Rohaan, you are from a very technical position at Ycenter Strategy. I mean, even when we're talking about solving this problem, something comes out at Ycenter, human-centered design.
Right.
What is that?
So human-centered design, which is also interchangeably used with the phrase design thinking,
Yes.
is a method of solving complex problems using empathy as a design tool. So as Dhairya was saying, it's solving with the people instead of for the people, right? Because the world that we live in right now, I mean, if you look at what's happening around us, it's volatile, uncertain, complex, and sometimes even ambiguous. So human-centered design is a process, where we can work with our stakeholders, understand, their viewpoint, and make more inclusive solutions, that can map the complexity that's happening in the world around us.
Yes.
And therefore deliver more sustainable, efficient solutions.
Fantastic. Just before I cross over to there then, so we can understand sustainability as well, which is at the core of Ycenter.
Right.
When you look at that particular one, sustainability,
Right.
why do you stress it more at Ycenter?
Right. So we take the UN Sustainable Development Goals
Yes.
at the heart of all the work it is that we do.
Yes.
Because when we look at helping communities, businesses, government agencies around the world design solutions, we are not just looking at, solutions, for profit. We're actually looking at profit, people, and planet. Like all three of those components are very important to design solutions, because we are having this interview in the middle of a pandemic, right? And the world is no more what it was in 2019. So if we are to come out of this catastrophe as a civilization, I think we have the chance to design better, to create a more inclusive, a more sustainable world, and that is why it's at the core of everything that we do here at Ycenter.
At Ycenter, fantastic. Then let me get on that as well. This human-centered solutions. Yeah. Do you think, because I know you've been across different states really trying to come up with these models, do you think that governments have realized that the solutions then have to be human-centered for us to feel like we're making progress?
Absolutely. Wonderful question you asked, especially bringing the governments into the picture, as we are also talking about elections. Governments actually have the biggest role to play in bringing human-centered design at the core of their policy making, at the core of their new projects that they're designing. And how do you do that? One of the ways is not to make all of these decisions wearing a black suit and a tie in an air-conditioned office and assuming people are going to love it. Doesn't work that way. Go out, talk to people, not when there are elections, even after they are done.
Yes.
Go out in people and find out what are the real needs, wants, capture that and then start the project. Don't start with the project and hope people will use it. Start with the people and then make it with them. As we keep saying, make with people.
Yes. But could I ask you about this human-centered solutions that you're into? Could you give us a couple of examples of some that actually make you proud as a CEO? Like, wow, guys, it is actually working, and it gives me heart to continue with this talk that I'm actually trying to move.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll start with the first example of the first project at Ycenter. I was working in Mozambique, down south, and one of the biggest problems they have is malaria. People still die of malaria around the world, especially in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes.
Now, the most typical solutions that have been used for many years is send mosquito nets, send this medications so people can treat when they get malaria. I'm talking about how can we prevent this. Now, malaria is a preventable, diagnosable, and a curable disease. All three boxes tick mark, but people still die. If you linearly think, it makes no sense.
Yes.
Now comes the human-centered perspective. You ask people, how do you want to do this? Local people. They will not just say they want mosquito nets. In fact, there's a famous economic theory. You send more mosquito nets, people may use it for fishing, because they also have a problem of hunger.
It's actually happened.
Absolutely.
It is happening. Yeah. You send more, they use it for fishing.
Exactly. So that's one problem.
Yes.
So when you use human-centered and this particular project, the goal is when you create a solution, don't create 5 other problems, which you do when you just donate things without even asking people. So we actually created a technology-based app in consultation with people in this Mozambican village, because we went to them and we were like, what do you like? What do you have? And we found everybody has a small cell phone. Even if you don't have mosquito nets inside your home, you have a cell phone. It's powerful. So we built an SMS-based cell phone solution to actually allow you to track malaria, to ask for help if you think you have some symptoms, and a community health worker comes to your doorstep, gives you a health test, an immediate health test, and gives you medication if you need it. And that was designed by 3 students at Ycenter back in 2015. And that is a perfect example of human-centered design. It was not just like, let's donate more nets.
Isn't it?
Let's rethink this whole idea. Let's prevent it before. Let's give information to people. There are more people dying because of information and more than mosquitoes today.
Yes.
So let's solve the information problem and maybe we can get closer. I'm not claiming, by the way, we can solve everything, and we did solve everything. But we made a better step towards creating a new human-centered solution. And I'm very proud of that solution. And that's what allows us to keep going on and be inspired by our own work.
Yes, pretty much. I like the way he's passionate about it. Rohaan, I would like to know, because in a strategy, especially when you're trying to say, well, we're human-centered, it has solutions that are created by the people, for the people. How do you make sure that your strategy actually works around giving these solutions? Because it looks as if you have to change your mindset first, before then you say, this is exactly what's going to happen. What has been working for you, especially when it comes to implementing this?
Right. So talking about strategy, one of the things that we really believe in is that we don't have a one-size-fits-all approach. So when it comes to being human-centered, we first started in the company, and we realized that every country that we work in, every new problem that we tackle, every community that we operate with has its own cultures, its own challenges, its own opportunities. So when it comes from a strategy viewpoint, what we like to do is not create rules of engagement, but instead create a framework of engagement, where we have our checks and balances, where we can make sure that the projects that we are designing, it fits the local culture, it fits the local context, right? And therefore is scalable because the ownership of the project is always with the people. So I'll give you an example, right? So we are working in agriculture, right, in Kenya. And one of the focuses that we have is we're running programs to help design farmer-owned, student-driven solutions. So note the phrase farmer-owned, because we believe that at the end of the day, the ownership, of some of these solutions, the power to control it, to change it, lies with the stakeholders for whom we are designing, right? So we come in as enablers, into communities. We understand problems. We engage local stakeholders within the cultural context, and therefore create solutions that are more inclusive, something that people can own as their own. We're not some corporate organization that just comes in and is like, here is, a solution you could make. We start with the people, right?
Pretty much. And just before I go to Dhairya then, on what the future of Ycenter is, this is what people say about human-centered solutions. The solutions are there. And why most of them haven't borne any fruit is that we come in, we implement it, but then we leave it. Just on that stage and say, well, it works. We don't work with it. Could you tell me, have you been able to work with these solutions and say, well, at this stage now we can live it. It's a baby that can't walk on its own now. Yes.
That's a brilliant question. Right? In fact, one of the challenges that we also saw, with existing projects is that, it seems great, works for 3 months, 4 months, but then gradually the interest declines. So one of the things that we focus on along with human-centered design is entrepreneurship, right? So it's human-centered entrepreneurship, because we feel that, without a business model, like if we are not investing in the economy, in the local economies, of these communities that we work with, there is no way a solution can remain sustainable for long, because if a solution is completely dependent on external help and aid for it to function, sometimes that's a problem. So we focus on human-centered entrepreneurship, which means we don't just help people design solutions, but we also teach them how to turn this into a business for good, and that's how we ensure that they can. So it's not just human-centered design, it's human-centered design combined with entrepreneurship.
Fantastic, I like it. So now, this is what takes us to a break, Dhairya. Ycenter, where do you see yourself then in the next 5, 10 years? Could you paint for me that picture that you have in mind, especially when we're talking about human-centered solutions?
Absolutely, let's do that. Ycenter is the business of solving complex problems. I told you earlier, our vision is to solve problems. So in an ideal world, if you are very good at it, in 10 years, I should be out of business, because we may have solved all the problems. That would be the ultimate dream. But we know, as the world is evolving, new problems come out. And our vision for next 5 years is to build that capacity to keep solving these problems, because problems are never going to end. We have to keep building that capacity. And I think the question you also asked Rohaan earlier, how do you ensure the project keeps going on? How do you ensure it doesn't die? And he mentioned one aspect of it is entrepreneurship and business. And at Ycenter, in 5 years, we want to see if we can go around 100 countries around the world, train enough young people to have this entrepreneurship business skills. We also want to work with the governments in next 5 to 10 years, work with the governments, large organizations. We are already doing that. Actually, that's what brings us to Kenya right now. We are working with governmental organizations, large organizations, to help them think about building technological solutions to be able to work better with people. So I think in the next 10 years, we would see ourselves working with, I would say, more than 1 million people around the world, hopefully creating jobs through solving world problems.
Pretty much. Guess what? We take a short break here on a Look at Business. Once we come back, then let's talk about another aspect then that Ycenter is really focused on, agribusiness. What is that? And what are they doing around it once we come back here on Look at Business on Look Up TV. Welcome back. You are still watching a Look Up TV. This is a Look Up Business. My name is Simba. Kiage. Remember, you can be in touch with us at Look Up TV across all your social media platforms. I am at Kiage Simba. Let's tackle the next part of the Ycenter conversation, agripreneurship. What is that? And I'm going to start with you. What is that?
Right. So traditionally, if you ask the youth of Kenya or anywhere in the world for that matter, about what their ambitions are.
Yes.
Very few young people say that they want to become a farmer. If given the money, the education, the young people are trying to leave agriculture, not get into agriculture, right? So there's this whole human capital drain that's happening from agriculture systems around the world. And the reason for that is plenty, but it's also because agriculture is not seen as a viable, career ambition anymore. And we realized that. So one of the things that we wanted to do is really make agriculture cool, right? Agriculture cool, not just for young people, but also for investors, right? For businesses, for economies, for governments, where they could now look at agriculture systems as a viable business investment. But since we are also human-centered in our approach, what we want to do is support, small-holding farmers, for example, in Kenya, where we are able to understand and map the problems, the challenges that they're facing.
Yes.
But also interface with government agencies, civil society, researchers, students, where we can use that combined human capital to design solutions that can then go on to be businesses for good, agribusinesses, if I may call them so, that can then create an economy that brings in, investments, builds a revenue model, and hence makes agriculture a viable, an option for youth to think about.
I like what you're saying, make agriculture cool.
Yes.
And when you look at agribusiness, agripreneurship, that is business in agriculture.
Yes.
But then what do you think the gap is? What is not working, especially from a human-centered perspective?
Yeah.
Because we do know agriculture, especially in Africa, we do know that that's the biggest employer. If you're going to make anything in Africa, then job opportunities have to come from agriculture. But then they're not. Is it because we lack human-centered solutions?
One of the many reasons you could say, and agripreneurship, we believe, is the answer to that, because it's made up of agriculture, which we already know what it is, but then it has this entrepreneurial component, entrepreneurship. And at the bedrock of entrepreneurship is solve problems and make money. And that's what is going to make this whole idea sustainable. Now, I don't want to just keep giving definitions and random words. I have a story. We actually are working with an engineering student right here in Kenya. In fact, today he graduates from an engineering school with a mechanical engineering degree. We've been working for last 1 year with this engineer. It's very easy for engineers to go out and work for big technology companies, but he chose to pick a problem in his community and use his engineering skills to actually solve that. It doesn't stop there. That's human-centered solutions because he really cares for his community. So he uses mechanical, electrical engineering skills, use some sensors and build an IoT-based sensor solution.
Yes.
That's technology solution, and he made a business out of it. He figured out who he can sell to. Can he sell to one farmer, but they cannot afford it? So why not lease out the equipment? Why not sell it one equipment to 10 farmers, a co-op of farmers, because they might be able to afford it? Can we rent it out so they can get better data and improve their agriculture methods? Here is a prime example of agripreneurship, a mechanical engineering student using all his skills topped up with business, entrepreneurship, and human-centered skills to actually build a human-centered solution.
Yes. I like what you're saying, because the empathy perspective then comes out. I mean, that was the definition of whatever human-centered solution is. Do you think that we have a culture as Africans in actually the places you've been, especially in the country and out over Kenya? Do we empathize a lot? Do we want to give the solutions there?
As I walked into the Lookup studio, I saw Mandela's picture. Africa, I think, is actually the best continent to practice human-centered design. I think if you actually trace back the history, you look at the culture, you look at the philosophy, Ubuntu, or look at the phrase, which is, I think we refer it to Mandela's phrase about going faster, you go alone, but going farther, you go together. Right there is a human-centered phrase. So, there is no doubt in our heads that Africa it is to practice human-centered solutions. And the culture fits right in. Africa is a community-driven culture. If you say, take care of yourself, yeah, that's okay. That's a very Western ideology. But if you say, take care of your family so that, you can also be happy, that is an African motto.
Yes.
We look out for each other. So I think it fits right here in the culture very easily, and hence we are in Africa.
Pretty much. So that particular strategy then, when it comes to agripreneurship, especially in this human-centered solutions, people say that strategy, has to move towards mechanization. We're talking about drones, we're talking about using more machines. Do you believe we have that ability as the continent to do that, given the financing gap that would enable us to get there? And how are you able to solve that from a strategy perspective? Because the will might be there to give you that human-centered solution, but then the finance perspective, like, okay, no, we can't give you that drone because why is the finance to give us that?
So I'm going to give you one word, how this works, and that is stories, right? Adding to what Dhairya was just saying about the student that we know that is using his engineering skills to stay at a farm and really build an agribusiness. This student has also won an international award, right, when it comes to the project that he's building. Now, that is already proof that the kind of work that's happening, and this guy is from Muranga, and the kind of work that's happening here in Kenya has the power to make it at an international level. So what we do is at Ycenter, we capture these stories, just like you're asking us, we go out there, we capture these stories because, the whole perception, we want to go out there and show the world the kind of potential that exists here in Kenya because we are here, we've been looking at it, we've gone around Africa, and the potential that exists needs a medium for the world to see, and we're using storytelling as a strategy for business and investments. And all of that, running these programs, we are looking at bringing in some of those investments to mechanizations, So we're using stories for our business angle, showing the world, the potential of what can happen in Africa, and hence getting in external interest, global interest in our projects, and therefore, building a platform where other young students, like this individual we are talking about, can see this as a viable career option, to grow and give back to their community.
Pretty much. You've been around for 6 years there. I mean, you've been coming to Kenya for 6 years.
Yes.
Could you report for me something that you've seen that says, well, our work is working, especially when it comes to agribusiness? What is this thing that you've seen maybe this time around when you're in Kenya, when you're saying, well, I didn't see this last time, and right now I can see this, which would be a report to the fact that, in fact, human-centered solutions actually could work in agribusiness?
So, yeah, you're right. I've been coming here since 2016. And one of the things that I can report back to you in one sense is that when I first came, I worked with like 15 students. And I thought, okay, let's see what happens. They stayed in touch. 3 years later, they tell me, oh, that workshop that we did in 2016, I'm actually working on an agriculture extension project now. This is 2019, just before the pandemic. So I came here again. We actually trained other people, and we realized this time, we don't need to just train students. We need to train the trainers, so that I don't have to keep coming, because we need local people to take charge. That's capacity building.
Yes.
And I'm seeing that the growth of internet penetration, and a lot of time when I work with young people, they say, oh, you know, we have a problem with the governments, or we have the problem with big agencies, but now that's changing. In fact, this year, our trip in Kenya is focused on working with large agencies. So we are seeing that there is a will from top and from the bottom. That is really fascinating, and that's what inspires me to keep coming. And I'm seeing that growth in 6 years. I can only imagine what will happen in next 5 and 10 years.
It's an interesting point that you mentioned that your trip this time around is sort of to garner partnerships then that will bring this idea to the fore. What has been your reception like there, especially in the country now, especially when you talk to these bigger organizations? Are they saying, yes, let's do it? Or they're saying, well, I mean, we've been trying different ways, but we've not seen results. Can you report to me what the ground has been like?
Absolutely. So actually, one of the ways we are able to work, and I think Rohaan mentioned this, is to keep it sustainable, to keep this going. We want to work with local partners. It's not all Ycenter everywhere, going to 100 countries. What we really mean is we need to find these local partners. And Kenya, I can say this with full confidence, has been very receptive to partnerships. We started with a company called P4CDA. You know, it's a local Kenyan-owned Kenyan company who invited us here that got this whole movement started. Right there is a testimonial that people are willing, they're reaching out. And by the way, that invitation came from the Kenya and not we coming to Kenya.
Yes.
So right there is a testimonial that there's an appetite for growth, for partnerships. So yes, of course, the question comes, we have tried a lot of things. How do we ensure it's going to work with you? Because we don't just come in with solutions. We come in with that angle of capacity building. We do want to build your local capacity with the organizations here in Kenya, because they are the ones who will solve the problems, and not just some companies coming from around the world. That's great. That's partnership model. But we need, combined with Rohan's strategy, what he's talking about, storytelling, that's what builds this partnership and takes it to the next level.
Pretty much. Rohaan, strategy, especially when it comes to agribusiness, that's the focal point. And I keep on saying, when it comes to Africa, it's going to be agriculture, if indeed we're going to catch up with the first world. Applying strategy, is it going to be a copy and paste on exactly what is happening in the first world?
Right.
Is that what you're trying to bring here?
Right.
Or it's got to be our local-made solutions?
Right.
What are you trying to sell?
Right. It's definitely local-made solutions.
Yes.
Right. As I mentioned before, we take a very sustainable approach, to this. So we don't have a one-size-fits-all. We focus on local communities, and that's how we bring about change. So that brings me to a very important point, when it comes to strategy. So I was talking about storytelling, but we do data-driven storytelling. So what that means is a lot of perceptions, that we have about communities, cultures, countries is based on the available data. If the data is not updated, your perception of the country or a community might be 50 years old, right? 20 years old. So what we're also trying to do strategically is collect data, right, in open standards, make that data available to the right stakeholders so that they can take action on it. So we have a data-driven policy agenda that we are following, for example, here in Kenya,
Yes.
where we are working with agriculture value chain stakeholders, trying to map, collect soil data, comparing that with, like, let's say, GIS data about the region, climatic data, but at the same time looking at policies, looking at what gaps exist from a legislation point of view, looking at what gaps and opportunities exist from a business point of view, looking at what's happening out there in the field, and then bringing that together so that, one, we can have, stories backed with data where we show the potential for impact and growth, but at the same time, make that data available, democratically, so that the right stakeholders can build solutions that are scalable based on that.
Pretty much. Like the way that is coming out, let's clear this conversation like this then.
You want to talk about data and storytelling?
No.
Okay.
Let's clear it like this.
Sorry?
Are you going back? Aren't you, isn't it?
Yes.
So talk to me. When you come back after this trip in the country, What would you like to see when you come back? And after how long are you going to take before you come back?
Oh, it could be just a few weeks
Yes.
before I can come back to Kenya. You know, Kenya is like a second home to me. I'm going to take that liberty of saying, because we have so many relationships that we have built here in the community. But the goal is, you know, every time we come, there has to be a motive. It's not just, you know, a visit. It's a visit with an intent and an action plan backed behind it. So usually our next trip, I hope, you know, we just went to Muranga County recently in a small school, which, you know, we are backing up, Impactathon School of Agriculture. And we hope, you know, the next time we come, there are 10 more people who have been through that workshop. There are 5 more entrepreneurs who have realized that there is a tech product and they need additional help with capital raising or storytelling, or they need help with some technology development solutions.
Yes.
So every trip is a motive, but every trip is also an upgrade from the previous trip. It's all continuous work. So what we planted today, you know, and we're talking agriculture. So let's talk about the seeds we are planting today. The next trip we want to come and water the seeds and, you know, see them grow. So that's really the analogy we are playing here with working with the communities in Kenya.
Pretty much. Gentlemen, I couldn't be happier. Hopefully after this conversation, then we become your partners in this storytelling, because indeed, like I said, growth and human-centered solutions is exactly what Africa is reliant upon if we're going to make it. Now, you also want to know more about Ycenter. You don't know what to do, talk to us here at Lookup TV. You can also talk to me directly at Kiage Simba. We can get to be part of the solutions we're talking about here, especially when it comes to human-centered solutions, solutions for you and I, and especially that vocal point, agriculture. My name